Well, hello. I am back. I'm Matt Williamson, if you haven't figured that out by now. But anyway, we got some serious stuff to talk about. My weekly article hit the site today. Of course, you should read it. But there was one little nugget I wanted to just talk about that's not particularly Steelers related, but it's extremely Steelers relevant. When I started doing homework on this, and originally I was going to write an article about, man, this offense stinks. And I'm like, everyone writes that article. I'm like, okay, and I'm sitting there thinking, you know what else stinks? My fantasy team stinks this year. My redraft team stink. Fantasy scoring across the league is down. Scoring sure seems to be down from an NFL perspective, not fantasy related. Is that true? And I'm sitting there thinking about some good offenses and all the problems they had. I host a podcast, Peacock and Williamson, and Peacock is a big Niners guy. I'm a big Steelers guy, and his offense is struggling, and there's so many of them struggling, and I'm thinking, well, here's a little side note. I think one of the things I bring to the table more than maybe any other NFL or, football analyst in Pittsburgh is the knowledge of the other 31 teams. And Pittsburghers, Steeler fans, I love you to no end, but I've done radio and stuff nationally and all over the country. I'm not sure there's a fan base that's blind to the other 31 teams as much as you guys are. It's just, boy, this line's the worst line in the league. I'm like, well, here's 10 that are worse, so I like to bring that perspective. And along these lines, here's what I did was, so through 3 games, the Steelers are scoring 18 points a game. That's terrible. We know that. The offense is scoring 15.3 points per game. That's even worse. That's horrible. I'm not defending the Steelers. That's not what I'm doing here. I'm just giving perspective of what's going on in the league right now. So I wrote this article during the Monday night game, but nothing changed because that was a low-scoring game. So there's 32 teams in the league. 17 of them, which is half, slightly more, are averaging 20 points per game or less so far this year. That's an immense number. Half the league can't get past 20 points per game. So for perspective, last year, when the season ended, there were only 10 franchises out of 32 that couldn't generate more than 20 points per game. And that's not offense. That includes kick returns, block punts, pick sixes, just total points scored by your team. Offenses would obviously be much lower than that, or noticeably lower, because you're going to get an extra score here and there from your non-offense. So again, 17 teams this year, 10 finished last year. 2020, there were only 4 teams that couldn't get past 20 points per game. That was the COVID year, and it was a little goofy, and then, holding was legal that year, if you remember. But still, 28 teams were producing 20 points or more per game. So what I'm telling you is scoring is down massively right now. It's a league-wide issue. And I even backed it up by saying this past week on Sunday, if we combine the the total point production of the Chiefs, Pat Mahomes, you know him, Josh Allen and the Bills, Chargers, Herbert, Rams, Stafford, Cardinals, Kyler, Packers, Rodgers, Bucks, Brady, and Broncos, Wilson. That's like the best of the group. I mean, those 8 teams averaged 14.4 points in week 3. Those 8 offenses, maybe 8, definitely 8 of the best dozen quarterbacks in the league, maybe the 3 best. Well, this past week, they averaged 14.4 points per game. Things are tough right now in the league in terms of scoring. I have a lot of reasons why, and I urge you to check those out. They are in the article. I think a lot of it is not playing people in the preseason. Offense is more of a continuity rep thing. Something I didn't mention in the article is there's a reason Peyton Manning and Marvin Harrison and Reggie Wayne did 9,000 million out routes a day, because that precision, that repetition is needed much more on offense than defense. And you'll hear me say this 8 million times too, that the athletes on defense, especially in the trenches, are just so much better than the on the defensive side of the ball. That discrepancy is a problem for this league, and that's why holding was legal that year, things like that. But if you think about the league through that perspective and realize the athletes on defensive line, including the TJ Watson edges, are much better than the athletes on the offensive line, it explains a lot. I'm going to come back with another little theory here, too, after this break. Okay, so as you know, I start digging around all the time, and I'm looking at, just pull up some pretty generic categories. And some things I found was, I just, went to teamrankings.com. They have every stat in the world, and just looked at rushing yards per game. What offenses are producing the most ground yards? Not the most efficient. I'm not talking about yards per carry. I'm not talking about the biggest runs, time of possession even. I'm just talking about how many rushing yards per game are teams generating right now. And is that still relevant in today's analytically based NFL? Well, I think the answer is a resounding yes, because I want to talk about a couple of the top teams, and I want to talk about a couple of the bottom teams. And in the end, if you look at it through a Steeler lens, I think they need to run the ball more, and despite how great their receivers are, and I think they have great receivers, but here's why. First of all, the Browns are the best rushing team in the league. 190 yards per game. That passes a sniff test. I mean, that passes everything you can imagine, and you just saw it firsthand. There might not be as much shame getting gashed by the Browns as you guys want to think, because they're doing it to everybody, and I think they're going to continue to do it to everybody. So that's very promising for Cleveland, especially while Watson's suspended. The next couple teams are really interesting to me. Well, also, the Lions are third. The Lions are a great O-line, just like the Browns, dedicated to the run game, building something there. But the second, fourth, and fifth team are Chicago, the Giants, and Atlanta. The teams after those are the ones you would think: San Francisco, Philadelphia, Baltimore. But why I wanted to talk about Chicago, the Giants, and Atlanta is I'm pretty sure I did a power rank before the season, and they were 30, 31, and 32, or darn close to it. I mean, the Bears and Falcons were definitely 31 and 32. So where are you going with this? Well, those three teams, the Bears, Giants, and Atlanta, have played way better than that. The Giants just lost their first game last night. The Bears have a winning record. How's that possible? Atlanta's been extremely competitive, despite having maybe the worst roster in the league. See where I'm going with this? Is run the ball for yardage. Doesn't even have to be super efficient. And you're keeping bad teams hanging around. How are the Bears 2-1? They can't even throw the ball more than 12 times a game. They look terrible. That's 100% true. How are the Giants 2-1? They're horrendous. We watched them last night. How's Atlanta? I mean, their rosters, I bet half you guys can't tell me 10 Falcons. How are they competing with good teams week after week? Well, I think that tells you the answer. So those top 5 teams, if you're the head coach, do you really want to put the game on Brissett's shoulders? Fields? Goff, they're third. Jones? Mariota? No. You're going to run the ball for volume. You're going to shorten the game. Even if it doesn't work, body blows. Keep swinging that hammer until the rock breaks. It's working for these teams. I don't know if it's something that'll last for 17 games. I mean, I definitely do think passing is more important than running. But for now, it sure is working. And I think that you're nuts if you don't recognize these things, and especially through a Steelers light. The Steelers are 23rd on this list. They average 90 rushing yards per game. They need to be up with those bad teams, those bad offenses, those questionable quarterbacks. I mean, whether it means 3 and out after 3 straight runs, I'm sort of getting open to that idea a little bit. That doesn't mean you can't use play action and take a shot. I mean, I'm not saying you run the ball 90% of the time, but I think you need to get your rushing yards, not even your yards per carry, up. And that just means volume. So to prove my point even more, some of the bottom teams, like the Jets and Houston, they're 26th, they're 27th. Seattle's 29th. They're bad football teams, and they're often playing from behind and can't run the ball well to begin with. You know, they're lacking talent. Bad teams are going to be at the bottom here. But again, it shocks me the Bears and the Giants and Atlanta aren't in that category. I mean, it's not like those three teams I just mentioned are immensely more talented than the Jets, Seattle, or Houston. I think all those teams are the least talented teams in the league. 3 of them are running the ball really well. 3 of them are not. And it reflects in the record and it reflects in the games. Now, the other couple teams I just want to mention here at the bottom are Vegas. They're 28th. They're the only 0-3 team in the league. That's a problem. The Rams are 30th. The Chargers are 32nd by a pretty wide margin. They're running the ball 59 yards a game. Well, do you think anyone's happy with how the Chargers and Rams seasons have gone? I know they have winning records. They may end up playing each other in the Super Bowl, but they don't look as good as we thought they did. And I think that's the reason why. Last team to mention is the Miami Dolphins. And to me, they're 31st. They're only run the ball 64 yards per game. Now, they stand out as an argument against Williamson. You have no idea what you're talking about on any of this conversation. Because a lot of power ranks came out today. I've seen them at the top of the list. They just beat the Bills. They're just choosing not to run because the passing game has worked so unbelievably well. Their new coach was the run game coordinator for the Niners, who are always at the top of the list. You know, I said things in the offseason before I even knew who their running backs were that whoever Miami's running back is, he's going to be on my fantasy team. Well, they're 31st in rushing volume. Now, I know you guys aren't super involved with the Niners. You want to talk Steelers, or the Dolphins. You want to talk Steelers. But I do think they've zigged when the league has zagged a little bit, and they're throwing at an extremely high rate, and it's working, and they're beating good teams, and they're undefeated. But I wonder, do they have the run game when they need it? You know, a team like Buffalo might win that game in Miami if they had a run game they could count on when they needed it. Miami, if they're going to be a true contender, is going to need it. So just something to keep an eye on with them. And again, all this relates back to the Steelers. And I'm not saying your Steelers should run the ball 9,000 times, but they don't have Benny Snell as a backup anymore. I mean, Warren is a good player. Between the two of them, maybe 30 carries are in order. You're down 10-0 at the half. Doesn't mean you don't have to, go back to the throw. And that doesn't mean you have to abandon the run. I think it would pay off, and I think it might be a way to massage the problems right now. And hey, you're probably like, Steelers O-line so bad. So, I mean, the Bears O-line is horrendous. I mean, a lot of these teams are really bad up front, much worse. And I keep telling you, Steelers O-line is getting better, and I thought their best run blocking was this past week. So, that's my thoughts. Over and out. See ya.